Welcome back to One Piece Anime Re-Review, episode 131. We're discussing the last 3 episodes of the first voyage of the Egghead Island dub. So, basically episodes 1094, 1096. Forgot to mention his last video, where there was a very interesting scene where you had, basically, on the Blackbeard ship, Pudding was there. At the time this came out, this was the first anybody has seen this woman in the anime form since the end of the Whole Cake arc. Because, here's the thing, they also include the flashback of how the heck this happened, where Kuzan and the guy with the warp power just invaded Toto Island and took Pudding for some reason. And then they left. Of course, you also see a brief return by Sweet Cracker, which anybody that's seen the anime knows that the last anybody saw this guy was in the first portion, the early stages of the Whole Cake arc. He was practically one of the first major villains of the arc that basically Luffy fought. And sadly, of course, we don't get to see a return of his voice actor. There's a good reason why I couldn't bring him back for this episode. Here's the reason why. Cracker doesn't speak. And that's not the fault of the animation for this. The reason why he doesn't speak, because flashback is taken from a cover story. Yes, which cover story you might ask? Why, this is from Gangbench's Old My Family. That is where this is from. Yes. And, of course, Alexis Tipton is back voicing Pudding for the first time in probably when she resumed this. Probably first time in a few years. A couple years, maybe. Yeah. So, as for the main episodes themselves. Well, basically, I'll find the Seraphim for a while. Well, walking through a tunnel. They have Lilith and the rest of the Straw Hats. They arrive at the Lob Post. This is basically episode 94. This is basically his debut appearance. And they go inside. By the way, on the outside, it looks like a giant boombox. As the most recent episode, this place basically is in ruins because of all the stuff happening here. That's what happened in the most recent episode. So they go inside. After, of course, they arrive there. Of course, they change clothes to the outfits they're pretty much going to wear the entire arc. Which, interesting, the fact that basically switch out the outfits they were before. Because in the case of like Luffy, he's basically switched back to his post time skip outfit. Sanji, from what I can tell, I think was already wearing. He basically went back to the outfit before. Usopp, I think pretty much everybody, a lot of everybody else went back to post time skip outfits, except for Nami and Robin. Those two did not go back to post time skip outfits. Yeah, Nami wore like a full suit, and here it's basically like sleeveless, and in the case of Rob, basically hers is basically shows a little more skin because she's older. She can show off some chest, which of course basically I don't think anybody has issues with that because she's like 30. So then of course they go inside, ride an escalator, which apparently they don't know what escalator it is, which yeah, and then they go inside, and then they have fighting basically a seraphim of Jinbei. And then of course while fighting it starts to swim in the ground, in the floor, and of course Frankie's like, I've seen that power before. Yes, there's a good reason why, because I belong to Senior Pink. There's an explanation for a little bit later, don't worry about that. So, and by the way, it's later revealed this whole experiment is controlled by 2 new Vegapunks debuted in episode 1095. That being Edison and Progress. Edison is voiced by Lindsay Seidel in, well, now I think like the 20... How many series now is for her? Here we go. This is actually his 21st series. Progress is voiced by Aaron Desmook, who basically, this is actually the 20... I think it's like 20th overall. And... And of course, debut Green. Of course, Edison is like thinking all these new ideas, basically to think. And of course, Progress. Of course, then he gets hungry. So then, of course, this is kind of funny. So Greed, basically York, he should want to eat stuff, and then, oh crap, I gotta use the bathroom. But basically, it's her job to basically do that. York herself, if in case you're curious, who voices York, if you're curious. Yeah, she's this very tall girl who does get chunky for a bit after eating so much food, and then he uses bathroom, and then of course gets slimmed down. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised though. Pragus basically gets hungry. He gets affected by the whole chubbiness, but not Lilith, because she's evil. And then after a while, basically, the experiment's concluded by Shiki the Good. Okay, here we go. York is voiced by Robin Clayton. That's who voices her. Mm-hmm. And the outfit, if you've ever seen pictures of this woman, basically it's a coat, a short top, and basically like almost look like she's wearing a pair of basically a pair of it's a pair of underwear, and that's her outfit the whole entire time she's on screen. I mean, she's a very tall girl. Mm-hmm. She is 15 feet high, 10 inches. That is all she is. I think she's probably the tallest of all the Vegapunks. Yes. And then, of course, basically we have Luffy, Jinbei, Chopper, and Bonnie on the run from a Kuma police officer. And then Bonnie turns herself into young and makes Chopper and Luffy old and makes Jinbei young, and then go through a wall. And then they come across a junkyard. One, of course, and of course, pick up devices like a lightsaber. And then, of course, they try to... Oh, look, there's a giant robot. Of course, they go inside. And then, of course, we have a old man pops out of nowhere. And this is Vegapunk. Yes. Dr. Vegapunk, a.k.a. Stella. That's what basically the rest of Vegapunks call him. Purely because, I mean, he's the main Vegapunk. Yes. This was a character who remained hidden for the longest time. He was seeing Shadow back in chapter 684 in the anime. We kind of see his shadow way back in episode 610, which came out in 2013. Oh, by the way, he actually is voiced by Kent Williams. Now, this character has been mentioned frequently the whole series. This is the one of the biggest characters they've built up the whole series. Eventually, he's a scientist. He works for the government. He's a genius, and the fact he's working with Kuma, kind of a cyborg, and of course, basically the fact that Frankie visited his country during just 14-year time skip. It's like they built this guy up for a long time, and now we finally see him. And of course, Bonnie wants to kill him because what he did to her father, Kuma. And of course, when he gets stuck inside the robot, it's like, oh, this reminds me of when Kinemon. Yep. Otherwise, though, basically great 3 episodes, and that pretty much wraps up the first voyage. And as of basically reviewing episode 1086, I now have exactly 37 episodes left to go. Yep, 37. And yes, there are 3 voyages left. I'm not going to go next voyage just yet, because next up is going to be Case Closed. Okay? Next video. Bye.